Battlefield 6 does have a server browser, one that does nearly everything fans want it to, but for some reason a large part of the community seem to want to ignore it. So yesterday I did a video addressing many of the concerns from the Battlefield subreddit based on what I'd played and experienced firsthand at the London reveal event. Check out that video if you haven't already. I think it's really good, even if I do say so myself. One issue that I intentionally didn't touch on was the server browser. Just because we didn't get to experience anything to do with what real matchmaking will look like, we were essentially playing on a big LAN against people within the venue. But the Battlefield developers have not been silent on the issue. As far as I'm concerned, they've pretty clearly explained the solution and how it addresses the worries of the fanbase. But for whatever reason, some of the community seem to be completely rejecting it. Let's talk about that. So, as a quick catch-up, older Battlefield titles, like most PC multiplayer titles, used to work using a server browser. When you want to play a multiplayer game, you'd load up a list of all the servers active at the time, and then you can filter them by things like how many free slots there were, your connection to the servers, what maps and modes they were playing, stuff like that. In many games, official and unofficial servers were both listed, so you could choose to play with official rule sets or join privately hosted servers where people might be running specific mods or tweaks to the rules, more tickets, hardcore modes, or even more dramatic changes to the game. This had a few real benefits. You could find a server that really works with what you enjoyed in the game. You'd often find communities, especially on the private servers, where admins could run whitelists blocking known cheaters, and seeing the same people day after day could lead to friendships and rivalries. The problems in the game, like broken metas or annoying ways of playing the game, could be mitigated through mods and custom rules. It was particularly helpful for people in low population areas, like Oceania, Australia and New Zealand, where instead of getting match made into servers with poor connections that are thousands of miles away, they could specifically pick servers with good connections but lower player counts. It's also useful even in high population places like Europe, where there's lots of people that speak lots of different languages. People might want to pick a French speaking server so they know their teammates will be able to understand them and speak in French, or people might be playing on a German server or a Spanish server. In games with just general matchmaking, because a lot of these countries are quite close together, you'll often end up on servers like, say, when I'm playing Warzone, where your teammates are fairly unlikely to speak the same language as you. But of course, no system's perfect, and server browsers also come with a few downsides. The first one, and probably the biggest one that I think a lot of sort of hardcore PC players don't think about, is that it can be pretty intimidating for new or casual players to pass all of that information in a server browser. Instead of just playing Play Conquest or Play Breakthrough, they get a massive table with tons of information about how many players are on the servers, lots of like abbreviations based on custom rule sets or what game modes there are, the ping to the server or to different players in it. There's a ton of different information there that you have to be able to understand to find a good server. And if you just start picking servers at random, you can easily start joining weird servers with odd rule sets or abandoned servers before you find one that works, and that's not great. You don't want people having a hard time getting into a game. Game developers often talk about that kind of time to fun. You want people to be able to load up a game and immediately get into something that they're enjoying and not have to do a bit of work learning how to find a good server and experimenting with different servers before they get into a good one. You also had a problem that on private servers, admins sometimes don't play fair, they can cheat, they are sometimes not honest about their player count. On some of the older Battlefield games, you can join servers that say they're full, and actually there's only 2 real players on the server. Or sometimes the rule sets would be working one way for most players and a different way for the admins and their friends. You'll often find servers filled with rule sets that get around the intended progression system. There's some people that love playing with super fast XP or hardcore modes so they can get kills really quickly, or high ticket modes so they just stay on one map forever, which can be frustrating when you just want to play the game the way the developers intended. And then there's skill-based matchmaking, or SBMM. The Call of Duty community will be all too familiar with this discussion, but in Call of Duty, SBMM has been a major part of the game since at least Black Ops 2, where matchmaking makes some effort, and it's debated how much of an effort it makes, to put you against players of a similar skill. While this can protect average and below average players from getting stomped in one-sided matches against more skilled players, you know, in Call of Duty nowadays especially, I think it's very rare to get into a completely one-sided multiplayer match. But it does make the game less fun for those more skilled players if they just want to kind of flex their skills and get high kill counts and easy wins as a kind of reward for the time they've spent in the game. It can also lead the game to feel a bit more bland, where everyone seems to be playing roughly the same way, without the extremes at either end of coming up against players much better than you or much worse than you. You know, even if you get better at the game, the lobbies will just get harder, so it always feels like it's about the same level of difficulty. Personally, as long-term fans of the channel will know, I'm a big fan of skill-based matchmaking. I think it's essential to keep the game fun for the vast majority of people, and I think it's better when lots of people play games. It's super important to people who play games just to relax and have fun, and even if that means it has a negative effect on more competitive players, I don't think that matters so much, because I don't think lower skill players or more casual players have any responsibility to provide easy kills for better players. Like, just because you spent a long time learning a game doesn't mean other people have to have a more miserable time just to make you happy. Everyone should be able to have a good time, and more fair matches encourage that. If you want to get good at a game, you'll have to put up with playing against people who are better, like you. But the server browser all but eliminates skill-based matchmaking, because anyone can join any server, and generally when you join a server you've got no idea of the skill level of the players. Some servers might advertise themselves as being friendly to new players or casual servers, but then you'll get high-skilled players dropping in just to get easy kills. And if a server advertises itself as a high-skill server, it'll often end up just being a ghost town because people don't often want to be challenged. Instead, it's just chance, which is what the highest skilled players want, because a random collection of players, if they're above average, means they'll have an easier time, but that's bad for everyone else. But anyway, in Battlefield 2042, EA switched from a server browser model to full matchmaking, and that angered a lot of players. You could no longer find a server running the rule sets you wanted. You wouldn't stick together as a server between games, like when it moved on to the next map you'd be kicked out and it would matchmake again, and there were no more communities forming over private servers. Now skill-based matchmaking had come to Battlefield, and that made life more difficult for higher skilled players. And on top of all of that, Battlefield 2042 just wasn't that good. But the idea that it didn't have any kind of server browser wasn't exactly true. It did have a server browser, but it was almost hidden away in Portal mode. In Portal, you could find player-managed servers that didn't have quite the control of a private server in the older games, but they could come up with custom rule sets and modes and start up a server that other players could search for. It wasn't perfect because many casual players just didn't know what Portal was or how to use it, so very few servers would ever remain populated, and because lots of people just used it to make servers to grind fast XP, often doing it so it's like players against a load of easy bots that will just constantly respawn so they could farm XP. Even if you did find a server browser, it was kind of difficult to find an actual interesting game. It was there, it was just hidden. So now we move on to Battlefield 6. It's been confirmed that the default way gamers are presented with joining a game will be similar to Battlefield 2042. You'll join a playlist, so normally centered around a mode or a rotation of modes, and it will matchmake you based on connection and, yes, what EA have described as a light skill-based matchmaking. Some parts of the community have been upset about this and very vocal about it, stating that they think a server browser is essential for Battlefield 6 and they're not happy with the current matchmaking system. A producer at DICE, the lead studio on Battlefield 6, Alexia Christofi, took to Twitter yesterday, or X, I still call it Twitter, to speak to the community about this. They asked why the community wanted a server browser. Even that question was met with hostility because some people inferred it to mean, oh, the developers just don't understand why server browsers could be good. That's obviously not true. I think they were just asking so they could address the specific points that people raised. But the responses were summed up into a short list. People want persistent servers, a sense of community and a way to play together, being able to choose specific maps and modes, being able to filter by ping or how full a server was, and support for low population regions. Alexia said there was more information coming in the future, but posted that the Portal server browser in Battlefield 6 actually addresses all of these already, even with what we already know with what's been officially released. Players will be able to set up servers with their own custom playlists of modes and maps, and as long as they stick within certain guidelines, they'll even be able to offer full progression. I think they're doing some kind of protections to stop people coming up with XP farm servers that will let people basically just skip all the progression. I'm guessing it'll be like, okay, you have a cap on the amount of XP per game or per hour or something like that. But anyway, Alexia states that it will be front and center in the main menu, not hidden. Hopefully, that means that players won't need to click on a portal tile first to see how to access them. It might sound like a minor thing having to click on one extra thing to get to a server browser, but just a little bit of friction there can be the difference between a lively community full of casual players joining servers of strangers and forming like-minded groups, or hundreds of disparate servers with a couple of players in each because no one's there to look to join them. So, is Portal a perfect solution for coming up with a server browser in Battlefield 6? Obviously it's hard to tell right now. The persistent server issue is probably the biggest problem that I can see. As far as I know, in Battlefield 2042 Portal, you run a server and while you're playing, the server is actually hosted by EA. You're not choosing like where it is or running it on your own hardware. And it's only active while you're on, or while at least somebody is on your server. So if you leave but there's still players in your Portal server, it will keep on going. But as soon as all players leave, so say if you're in a region like Australia and it gets to being like 2 in the morning and everyone goes to bed, then that server completely shuts down. And it won't come back again unless the same host starts up the same server with the same description, the same rules, etc. the next day. So that means persistent servers, especially in those regions with low populations, aren't really a thing because when the servers are gone, you don't know if they're going to come back up, and you can't just like do what you would do on the older games where you would highlight a few servers as your favorite servers, and when you get online just join the ones that you can see have some people in, because it will constantly be new servers that are starting up, and if the host isn't there, then you can't play. Like, that's rubbish. I think you really need some kind of persistency on the servers. The lack of that persistency obviously makes sense for EA. They don't want thousands of empty servers taking up hardware resources. But I think it really does kill smaller communities, and those are often the best ones. Those are the ones where you get to know the people on the servers. For the other requirements, I think Portal does a pretty good job. Players can pick the maps and modes, filter by ping or player count, and run custom rule sets to get around any kind of annoying metas. Like, in the mode we played, the shotgun was super overpowered, you could just disable the shotgun on your server. I think for the lower population areas, it would still be better if privately hosted servers were possible. I'm not sure where EA's Portal servers will be hosted, or how much control players will have over like which data center it's in, but I suppose it's still better than nothing. It would be better if players could say, hey, we've got the hardware, we're willing to pay for the hardware for a persistent server in, say, like Melbourne or in Brisbane or something like that, and then EA just kind of let them run a server from there with the same rule sets and appearing in a server browser. That would still be better, and I don't think that's going to be possible as far as I know. But for players who aren't interested in a server browser and who just want to hop into Battlefield 6 and play the game the developers intended, that option's obviously going to be there too. And I do think that will still be the default. Most players will be doing that, which in turn means less people will be using the server browser, so the server browser servers, the custom servers, will have less people in them. I think a better solution would be a combination between the two, where matchmaking just places players in servers that are also accessible from the server browser. So if you say you want to play Conquest, it will put you in a conquest server that has space and is a good connection for you and stuff like that, out of the ones that are available on the server browser. So you'd have like 2 routes to the same endpoint. And you could have some sort of restrictions on skill-based matchmaking for some servers, so like a ranking ELO system saying, okay, players over a certain ELO can't join the server, or players below a certain ELO can't join the server. So you'd get people who know how to play the game. And obviously you would need a clear marker to define official or unofficial servers. Like when you're matchmaking, say, I only want to play on official servers because I don't want to have to deal with crazy like rule sets or changes that the admins are making. But maybe that's asking for too much. Right now, as far as we know, Battlefield 6 does have a server browser. That's the headline. And it sounds like we'll find out more about how exactly it works over the next few weeks. It's not actually that long until Battlefield 6 comes out. It's only October 10th, so we've got, what, we're at the beginning of August right now. We've just got August and September. And so only 2 months really until the game comes out, and then we'll definitely know how it works. Until then, I think it's a good idea for people who care about this to just talk openly about what they'd like, what their concerns or hopes are, just without some of the insane toxicity. I haven't really mentioned it in this video so far, but when that producer put out the tweets, there were a lot of people being very, very toxic and angry, and obviously that's just going to mean that the developers don't engage with the community. We've seen that with a bunch of other communities where the developers have just pulled back and said, oh, if people are going to start harassing the developers, people are going to start being mean to the developers, like, it's not worth it to engage with the community, so we'll just pull back. So try to be respectful. Always remember, you don't speak for other people. You might not be part of the majority even if you think you are, and the developers obviously have more knowledge about the game and the data than we do. So stay a bit humble and let them do their thing. It's just a video game. If they do something you don't like, you don't have to play it. Anyway, let me know what you think about how the server browser solution is working as far as we know in the comments below, and what you want from a server browser. Is there something you want that Portal isn't currently addressing? I am currently reaching out to EA to see if I can ask a developer some questions about all of this stuff, so let me know your questions in the comments below, and then if I do manage to get that interview, I'll put them to the developers and come back to you with some real answers, some real official answers. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one. Goodbye.